Hello, and welcome to the Unsung Cyber Hero Adventures TV network. Today's show focuses on answering the question, what is the cybersecurity nexus between academia and large enterprises? Stay tuned to find out. I'm your host, Gary Berman. Our mission is to shine the light on the people and organizations who keep us safe online, while at work, home, at school, and to serve as a business-to-business networking platform for the cybersecurity and information tech communities. We've learned that 55% of human communication is nonverbal. That's why we include a video feed, so that you have the option of seeing our guests or simply to just enjoy listening. It's also why we're called a TV network. We're all about information sharing and business-to-business networking. You never know who you're going to meet and how you can maximize opportunities resulting from meeting our guests. This is especially valuable now that the community's primary way of conducting businesses, conferences, has been put on hold for the foreseeable future. Well, today we have two great thought leaders on our show. Sandy Silk is the Director of Information Security and Consulting at Harvard University. Sandy leads a team of information security specialists who consult with researchers, faculty, and all kinds of departments on security risks and controls for the data, technology, and vendors they use within their projects. Her team also manages the annual information security self-assessment across the university, coordinates the annual review process for the information security policy, and produces the Security Awareness Campaign and related IT Academy training courses. Sandy, when do you sleep?
Whenever I can and wherever I can. Yeah, I have a fantastic team, and we have a lot of fun. And I can't wait to talk more about it.
Well, tell us a little bit about your origin story and about the amazing and challenging mission, that you have with the complexity, of all the stakeholders in Harvard. But let's start with your origin story, and then we'll introduce our next guest.
Sure. Well, I always thought I would be working at Harvard. I just thought I was going to be a professor of Germanic languages and literatures there, instead of working for their cybersecurity team. I actually wanted nothing to do with technology while I was in high school because of an older brother who was so into it. And I went to college to declare Germanic languages and literatures my concentration. I was going to be a professor, a teacher. And eventually, between my master's, which is from Harvard, and my PhD work, I ended up temping for a financial services company, assisting the CIO of a systems group, and they just saw a lot of potential in me to help analyze things, because just being able to analyze recurring themes in literature translated very easily to analyzing patterns of people's behavior, of system patterns, and being able to communicate well to people or in writing. So they saw a lot of potential, and they really enticed me to stay, and were fantastic people and gave me great opportunities. And now I'm working at Harvard, but in their information security group, keeping the university as safe as we can.
Well, I guess the folks over there realized that you had a lot of potential, because you've, I'm sure, excelled all expectations, and I can't wait to delve a little bit more deeply into that. In the meantime, our next guest is Joan Ross, the Chief Intelligence Officer at InsightCyber. Joan is a global technologist focused on cybersecurity, machine learning, AI, threat analysis, secure design, global services, incidents response, software-defined networking, encryption key management, privacy, infrastructure reliability, and successful technical implementation of industry-leading cybersecurity strategy. Are you kidding me? Joan.
I love what I do, Gary. Love it, love it, love it.
Well, you have an incredible background, steeped in cybersecurity. We'll hear more from Sandy how that was not her background, but you're kind of the counterbalance to that. Tell us a little bit about your origin story.
Well, I had been a radio engineer for 2 years, at the NBC affiliate here in Seattle, and a friend came in and he said, well, why don't you work with real computers? And I went and interviewed at his company, and it was like, well, I know Bob is brilliant, but I can't tell from the software interface, how powerful the software really is. And they thought that was a great comment. I started in tech support in the early 90s, and the Fortune 100 were my specialty because I started at 6 a.m. and they were already having network problems at 9 a.m. So they would call me, and this is right at the time people were moving from local area networks to wide area networks. And they were concerned about their intellectual property because security really wasn't, the concern except at the highest levels of the country. And so I went to another brilliant engineer, and he said, well, I'll just take the MIT Kerberos code and rewrite 85% of it, and we'll have a commercial off-the-shelf client product called Reflection Secure. And we don't want to hear feedback on it, so we'll push Joan out to go put it in place and talk to customers. And for 7 years, I walked into some of the most incredible organizations, mostly in the US, but also the Five Eyes around the world, and had the privilege of talking with, physicists working on photon ray encryption at the DOE, and other great conversations with people who just were serious about security. And I was hooked. It got to the point where I was able to just keep progressing through it. All of the standards, HIPAA, Sarbanes-Oxley, PCI DSS, ISO 17799, which became 27000 came out, 27000 series. And, I had the good fortune, I think, of just being in the right place at the right time. And once you start working with some of the technologists in security, you realize we're the good guys. And, there are a lot of bad guys out there. And you're just committed, as you are with your cyber hero adventures, to really progressing the good in our society.
Wow, and you said so many interesting things just now. I'm going to just follow up on one, which is just the idea of using the term good guys and bad guys. Everyone knows that this is a heavily male-dominated industry, but you had a secret sauce in terms of the size of your family. Can you share a little bit with our audience about your family composition and how that might have, been valuable to you?
Love to. I have 6 brothers and 2 sisters and 15 nieces and nephews now, and they're also good guys in other fields. And so when it's Thanksgiving or Christmas, none of us can talk about what we do. We have to talk about the Seahawks and weather.
Oh, okay. Is that sort of a code word for the nature of their work? Well, just so you know, as part of my Forrest Gump journey into cybersecurity, I had a chance to meet, sort of these top secret people in a 3-letter agency. And I won't say which one it was, except during my Uber ride, I went by a street called Quantico Boulevard, and like, what? Why am I here? But
Yes.
Not about me. Sandy, so tell us, a little bit more. I noticed the background that you have, behind you. Explain, that initiative.
Sure. So the tagline you see on the kind of circular pie there ties to our awareness campaign for information security at Harvard, Small Actions, Big Difference. And it's really all about the small things that everybody can do and can achieve to make our systems, our data, our people a little safer. That, if everyone takes these small steps, it does add up to a big difference. For example, 2-factor authentication, which we have rolled out across the university. It doesn't take much to do this regularly, but it makes such a huge difference. So we've made it very easy for people to accomplish it, those who should. And that simple little step of going through that extra authentication just makes it such a harder attack for someone else to carry out. And you'll see that it's a beautiful setting behind me. We often partner with different groups around campus, and in April for Earth Day, we partner with our Office for Sustainability, and we do responsible recycling. So we have people bring hard drives and such into shred, and we recycle the other parts of electronic components, the metal housing, all that can be recycled. But since we couldn't do that event live this year, we instead found 4 very beautiful backgrounds, because our colors are like red, green, blue, and orange when we do the color logo. So this one represents the green, which is these strong passwords, but we could support Earth Day by having beautiful images people would want to use in their Zoom backgrounds while we're all remote, and remind people of our campaign at the same time.
Well, you know, in my opening, I said something along the lines like, you never really know who you're going to be, you know, meeting here. As it happens, one of our partners or sponsors, as I'm having trouble with my cord. See what I told you, I have to learn about how to do this stuff. Oh my God, I'm being attacked by a cord, and this is not something you can fix in post edit. So here it is live. The joy of working from home. Anyways, but one of our partners happens to be the largest, or one of the largest e-recycling companies in the United States. So I had to learn all about e-recycling, and you know, it's an incredibly important industry. In addition to the chemicals and the material, you know, that you speak of, what about all the data, you know, that people just casually, you know, dispose of, you know, a smartphone or laptop? I mean, what, you know, what do you think about that, Sandy?
You bring this up. We've been doing this with Earth Day. I think, well, this was our 3rd year, but so we've done 2 live recycling destruction events, and we measure in hundreds of tons or that we've recycled. And a lot of it is we need to bring out the hard drives of machines that had sensitive research data, because we need to produce certificates of destruction to give back to National Institutes of Health or whoever was the organization that provided the data, that's part of the life cycle of that data that was under our stewardship. So especially the first year, we could empty closets or shelves that had hard drives waiting to be destroyed that people just didn't know where to go to have this done. So it was a huge win for the university to really clean up and take care of that last step that they needed to ensure secure destruction of the data.
Yeah, it's a win-win all around, because not only are you getting, you know, secure destruction of the data, but you actually are helping the environment. There are a lot of nasty chemicals in the stuff that we enjoy that I had no idea about. Joan, so tell our audience, you know, a little bit more about how you developed. How young were you when you developed a passion for technology? I mean, when was there some teacher? Was there a precipitating event? Did you just, you know, find yourself, you know, loving technology? How did that happen?
I was 15 years old and working at the University of Washington after high school for extra credit. And they were putting in the Trash 80s, the TRS-80 terminal systems at the time. And so I was part of that wave of helping set those up. And then, you know, teaching the professors how to use them. And dovetailing into Sandy's critical effort, you know, with COVID and so many people working from home, one of the real security risks right now, and this is my passion, building on your question, Gary, is the home networks now are adding in with what data everyone keeps on their home network and communicating then with work unless they have completely separate setups. And you know, I've always been able to progress from, you know, from encryption to .com to cloud. Now I'm working with machine learning and artificial intelligence, which is just thrilling. And you know, what we're finding is that we do behavioral analysis of anything on the network. And, you know, our tagline is analytics at scale because there's so much data out there. How do you reduce that and prioritize that and get that out to security teams that don't have a lot of budget or ability to hire more resources right now? And so you really have to use machine learning to get ahead of the bad guys, because you need, you know, you need a brain on steroids, essentially. As smart as everybody is in security, you know, to work at the scale of these networks that are fully focused 24 hours a day on getting in, you want to be able to detail in real time what is potentially malicious behavior. And you want to qualify that to a high degree of certainty so that people aren't just running around after anomalies. It's actually based on a pattern that's different. And what does that mean? Well, you know, one of the questions I ask people, I say, we find things that other people don't even see. And it's the really subtle things of where they might come on the network and they might have valid credentials that they harvested from some other place. You know, it's very hard to detect that replay of valid credentials within the network once they get in. So that's where machine learning really provides a process for artificial intelligence to take an action against that threat.
Well, you know, one of the
Can I
interesting...
ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
I want to ask a follow-up question, Joan. So what do you expect to see as kind of challenges in that behavior-based analysis now that people are suddenly home and maybe having to do homeschooling or, you know, other things that interrupt their normal work schedule?
Well, you know, a really good question, Sandy, because, you know, of course, we test this on our own home networks. And one of the things that we find is when people download apps to their mobile devices, they're not always vetted as secure. And so that's where we'll find things on people's home networks where some of these applications are sending communications and things that they shouldn't. And, you know, you really have no way of validating that because everything goes out port 80 on the firewall. You know, so even if you have a firewall, you know, it doesn't look like suspicious traffic necessarily unless you really dig into it. And it's so low and slow, it's really not setting off alarms. It's, you know, it's not malware that has a signature or something of that nature. So really good question.
Yeah, and Sandy, just to, you know, build upon that, you know, without revealing anything confidential, you know, is Harvard very involved with artificial intelligence and cybersecurity or machine learning?
We are, and in many different ways. I mean, we're always looking to what can we automate so that we can use our people resources more effectively. So anything that's repetitive, you know, can we automate it? Can we have other things analyzing it and only escalating the important things to us? I think another interesting piece, though, when you're looking at AI, machine learning, because we also have Kennedy School that's going to look at public policy. Do we have enough data to be unbiased in how we're evaluating how things happen? So, you know, especially in the current climate in the world of, you know, perhaps not equitable treatment of everybody, you know, is our data pointing the same way because what we see only represents a certain demographic. And now that people may be working from their home or native areas, and we've had to send out some Wi-Fi adapting so that they can actually connect to internet. You know, what's the new data we're going to see because they're not on campus? So it's fascinating to see all sides of it.
Yeah, and Gary, I have another good story for you and Sandy. This
Go
was
ahead. Yes.
This was an infamous investigation that we did where, you know, it was the perfect model employee that gets their work done on time and has great performance reviews and all of that good stuff. And especially now working from home, this is going to be harder to detect. Well, the company could see that they were getting connected to every day from another country, but they really couldn't follow it inside and see where it might be going. And, you know, this leads into the example that I gave earlier. In fact, this perfect employee had about 4 full-time jobs and had given their two-factor information and subcontracted out their work, that's very hard to detect, and that's an internal threat. And so that's where, especially at universities, Sandy, I imagine you have a lot of people connecting in from all over the world, especially at Harvard, which is so globally renowned for their research and business skills. So is that something that you deal with on occasion?
So certainly we can't be biased for what countries are connecting, because we have, as you said, students, faculty, academic appointments, research collaborators everywhere in the world. So we would expect to see legitimate connection from almost everywhere too. But I have run in at multiple employers where I've worked, so not just one, the situation that you're mentioning. And it has most often happened with contractors who are brought in to do specific gigs, that they're doing multiple gigs across multiple companies, and they're subcontracting their work out. And they're just totally amazed that, what do you mean this isn't okay? I got your work done for you. I took the pay you gave to me, and I hired people at lower pay. I got the work done. What's the problem? You think, no, I didn't contract and vet those people.
Yeah, and that brings up another really important matter, which either one of you both can comment on, which is the Department of Defense's new initiative. It's referred to commonly as the CMMC, which is a cybersecurity maturity model that is going to be a requirement that everyone in the supply chain who does business with the Department of Defense has to get some level of certification to be able to eventually work for them, and probably, by extrapolation, the federal government. What about supply chain security?
Well, that was certainly one of my biggest attacks as a CISO, not to my protected network, but to a third-party network. You'll remember back when Zeus and Upatre malware was very prevalent, and to a degree still is, where they install keystroke loggers and they'll replay those credentials very quickly. You'll have like customer service people come in early in the morning, 6 a.m., and they haven't had their first cup of coffee yet, and they'll get a customer service request from one of their valued customers. And they might not realize it's misspelled, that domain URL is misspelled a little bit. And they'll click on it, and by that time they're infected. And, they won't think twice about it unless they're very well educated with security awareness training. And even then it slips through a lot. Human nature is people are slow to report lost or stolen devices, or if they think they might have done something wrong. And so what we find is, it used to be within an hour or two. Now it's really, within minutes that they replay those credentials to the supply chain, where they can, where they have those valid credentials, and where there might not be as good of security controls as your own enterprise or production network. And so, supporting your supply chain and making sure you have equivalent security is very, very important. That's why I support this measure. And even using the cybersecurity framework that NIST put out, it's really geared towards having conversations. And when I used it, it facilitated a conversation with an engineer who had just happened to work across 3 companies in this particular industry and knew that a default password had been in use for 10 years to a service account. And if I hadn't had that framework to have that type of discussion with, that might not have been found at the time. And so the company was really grateful to have found that. That company had a CISO. It's just one of those things that can fall through the cracks, and that's why these frameworks can be so very valuable.
And just to build on that, Sandy, can you, for our audience, just kind of dimensionalize your stakeholders, whatever you can share, like how many people you interact with? I mean, I can't even imagine all the different constituents that that you have to accommodate?
So our structure is I'm part of the Central Information Security Group at Harvard University, and we support the whole university. But all the schools, each of the professional schools, has their own security office to varying degrees and sizes, right? So it's really just high risk projects that might come past that local security office to our attention, which most often is going to be research data that have very specific contractual requirements, or it's high risk to the human subjects who are contributing data, whether it's a mental health study about suicidal ideation, that we would not want anyone to know who was a part of that and start harassing people, right? That would be life safety for them. Or it's operational technology, right? So we're a campus, we have our own power plant, we have our own water filtration system, we have wet labs that are going to be able to release toxic gases for various experiments, right? Is that system connected to the internet somehow, that if someone else got control of it, you could be releasing toxic gas into a room, right? That's life safety. So when it reaches kind of the high, either the data is extremely sensitive or the functionality is sensitive, whether we're contracting to a third party somehow, a cloud vendor to store data, or we're bringing in people who are going to install these very specific industrial components. You know, they're going to have to meet basic security requirements, like you were saying about default passwords. You know, before you put this industrial piece of equipment on the network, have we removed default passwords? You know, do you know how to? Is that possible on this thing? So just making sure anything connected to the network has met some baseline security requirements, and if it can't, what can we do to isolate it so that we don't have to worry about some functionality that would be beyond our control to detect and to stop. So that's really, it's all about partnerships, and you know, where can you get good response? You know, if it's a third party, are they ready to respond? Will they even believe you when you tell them there's a problem with their system, and get them to do something, because you know, you can't touch their system directly. So we help with all of those negotiations and pointing out, you know, you better be sure you can deal with this vendor, or this equipment's going to meet your needs. So it's no day is the same. We might deal with graduate school of education one day, law school, another, school of public health, doing research in third world countries. It's fascinating, and it's just wonderful to see all the great initiatives that we're making possible.
You know, I think you just gave me an idea for the title of an upcoming show. No day is the same. You know, and based upon what Sandy just shared, Joan, I know that your organization specializes in industrial control systems and things like that. So Sandy was talking about, you know, having a power plant. Why don't you share with our audience a little bit about, you know, what your organization does? And you, when you and I were getting to know each other, you shared that you have a passion for physical security, you know, which is something that most people don't talk too much about.
Well, you know, that's really true, Gary. And, you know, here in the Pacific Northwest, we have our share of serial killers. And so, you know, I was just like a very young child running around Lake Sammamish State Park that day when Ted Bundy killed not one, but two women here. And, you know, I was there with my brother and my friend, and, you know, I think once you go through something like that, it really impacts you. And so that from that moment on, physical security and understanding the risk, you know, was of paramount importance to my family. And but also, you know, what Sandy's talking about, we talk about the theft of private data. And, you know, we know that they have stolen financial information of people, and now they're linking it to health information for people. And now they're doing ransomware attacks against cities. But, you know, think of it at the scale of industrial controls, grid, oil, gas reserve, things that really power the United States, and how catastrophic something like that would be. That's really what's behind our research and development of behavioral analysis of anything on networks, and really being able to glean who's doing what, and is it being accessed and used appropriately, because those can be the devastating attacks that have consequences. And there's somewhat famous story, you can search online for this, on the New York Dam hack, but another country was able to infiltrate and access the New York City Dam, and they thought, oh, this is going to be a really good thing. It went all the way to the White House, as a matter of fact. In fact, it was just a small little creek dam about 20 miles outside of Manhattan, and so it wasn't quite the attack that the attackers had hoped it would be. But I mean, that's certainly the kind of wake-up calls that
yeah, I mean, well, there have been successful attacks, for example, in Ukraine, that shut down some of the power grid, and there are many experts who believe that that was just the tip of the iceberg, kind of a test to see what would happen. I had the privilege of listening and learning from a guy from the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, was telling me that when President Putin's ship, his yacht, and his escorts of naval carriers went around, to a certain area, all the other ships' GPS systems were hacked. They were off. So let that sink in for a minute. If an airplane is off by 20 yards, let alone miles, I mean, oh my gosh. Sandy, let me ask you, about this, since I'm talking about Russia. Harvard is a repository for incredibly valuable information. How do you kind of fend off, or have you had to deal with nation state attacks?
Certainly, in some areas, we would expect that, as any large research university would, right? It's not always information about individuals. It may be technology developments, or synthetic genome development that another country would be interested to have. So we have to recognize that ahead of time, that, is this going to be of interest to other parts of the world, but also how do you distinguish between, okay, but do we have any external collaborators who are there already? So it really gets to be who's supposed to have access, how are we getting them access, because we want to share with the appropriate partners around the world, but also think we have very powerful individuals who, from government, from politics, who attend different programs. Would someone want to get into their personal accounts, social media, email, and such, and try to see, could they dox an individual, or could they leverage information that's being shared in places that it shouldn't, like email, to get information that could affect decisions elsewhere? Or, are they even just going to start harassing people or their families because of an unpopular tweet they just made that, maybe this person wasn't on our radar until suddenly they tweeted something, and now they're on everybody's radar, and we have to go talk with them and say, all right, let's make sure your social media accounts, your family's social media accounts are, as safe as we can get them now. And, what else can we do to ensure, your online safety, and Joan, as you were saying, even, like the physical safety if someone's going to try to track anything going on. So, it's what happens online affects the physical world.
Yeah, in fact, my family gets together every couple of months and we do a password changing party. From the 8-year-old on up. We're actually very clever about our passwords, we think anyway, for the passphrases. But, it's that kind of mentality and culture that I'd like to see happen more within organizations and other families, because you know, there's a lot at risk, and we want to imbue good practice and good qualities, and to keep people aware, you know, that your information is vital and it has value. And we know, you know, there's a dark web where for a nominal cost, you know, things can be purchased very quickly. You can even hire a hit person on the dark web. Hopefully it's, you know, undercover FBI, but you never know.
I mean, and frankly, I think an evolving threat at this point is not so much that data is going to be stolen, but is it going to be altered in some way? If you think of research going on, you know, it's devastating if someone else can steal that research and beat you to publishing and taking credit, but what if they just sabotage your data? And, you know, not only do you not get to publish first, but what you have now, if it's done slowly over time, you may not notice that it's being corrupted. You know, I also worry about healthcare systems. You know, suddenly an allergy to medicine I have is no longer there, and you're giving me that medication because the data was corrupted. You know, life safety or business decisions being driven in trading portfolios, you know, based on that information, you know, but we worry so much about is data going to be stolen and used by someone else versus what if it was just compromised, you know, updated, changed in our systems at a slow rate we didn't detect. Can we detect it? Do we have a good backup to go back to the kind of golden copy, and how much data would we lose recovering it? So, you know, those are discussions that we have when we're talking with teams to say, all right, we've talked about the worry of it being stolen. What would happen if it were just totally corrupted? How would you know? And what would you do to manual workarounds or whatever at the time? And, you know, it's an interesting concept to think about.
And Gary, I think something else that Dr. Sandy and I are passionate about is incident response, and really having that team primed, you know, to not only investigate and validate, you know, but to be able to contain. And I know that Sandy's done some great work in that area as well.
Well, on that note, thanks so much to Sandy and Joan for this incredible interviews. Sandy was maybe half joking, saying, you know, we should do this every month. I'm in. You know, I got my start reading a book called Cybersecurity for Dummies, and 10 pages into that book, I was lost. So for me, it's a privilege to spend time with you. To learn more, we'll have contact information for both Sandy and Joan. And if you'd like to be a guest on our show, just send an email to Gary at cyberheroes with an S, comics with an S, .com. We hope this helps.